Light particles surged continuously from the heavens and the earth, finally enveloping Chen. As his eyes slowly closed, it felt as though a consciousness soared into the sky. Supported by the countless wish lights, it rushed into the endless void. Not long after, Chen suddenly sensed something. His consciousness opened his eyes, only to find himself seemingly entering a chaotic realm. It was like the world had just been created. There was no distinction between up and down, and even time seemed to flow incredibly slowly here. Chen gazed at the chaotic world, his consciousness gradually spreading, slowly sensing the dimension spirit hidden within this chaos. At first, there was no response, but as the wish light around him grew stronger, he finally felt a strange fluctuation coming from the chaos. Chen's consciousness swiftly approached, and then he saw it. Within the chaos, light surged and blossomed, resembling an ocean, rippling in the void. The chaotic light seemed to contain endless vitality, and the vastness of it shook Chen's heart. The power was extraordinarily pure and ancient, as if it had been born when the dimension itself was formed. Chen stared at the chaotic light, sensing a boundless, distant fluctuation within it. Clearly, this was the dimension spirit of this realm. Suddenly, the chaotic sea stirred, waves crashing like the sound of water. In the center of the chaos, a massive vortex formed, and soon after, a gigantic chaos orb about 1,000 feet in diameter slowly rose from it. The chaos orb pulsed like a heart, and with each pulse, the entire dimension trembled. As it breathed, storms gathered, tides surged and retreated, and the sun and moon rose and set. Is this the dimension spirit? Chen looked at the chaos orb, and although he didn't sense any consciousness from it, he could feel a trace of spirit. Chen's eyes suddenly sharpened as he noticed something. On the surface of the chaos orb, there seemed to be blood threads, winding around it like maggots. This made the chaos orb look strangely out of place. Is it because the Blood Fiend clan invaded this dimension, slaughtering countless beings, that the dimension spirit was also corrupted? Chen's gaze flickered as he came to a realization. However, this situation made him feel a little pleased. The dimension spirit had already sensed the crisis posed by the Blood Fiend clan. If that was the case, there would likely be much less resistance when it accepted him. Various thoughts passed through his mind as Chen's consciousness slowly drew closer. Dimension spirit, I can help you drive out the Blood Fiend clan and restore life to this world. But in return, I need your power. Chen didn't try to hide his intentions. He knew that while the dimension spirit didn't have full consciousness, it possessed a certain spirituality. It would rely on instinct to gauge the dangers of this dimension. As Chen's words fell, the chaos orb seemed to tremble slightly, but there was still no response. Chen understood that since he wasn't a native of this realm, the dimension spirit was naturally a bit resistant. If Bai Susu were here, she would have probably received its assistance by now. But Chen wasn't in a hurry. He solemnly spoke again. The Blood Demon Emperor is powerful. If he breaks free, I won't be able to defeat him. At that point, to protect myself, I'll have to retreat. And this world will be completely overrun by the Blood Fiend clan, and all life will be turned into blood feast. Even you, Dimension Spirit, won't escape unscathed. You'll be corrupted and absorbed by the Blood Demon Emperor. His words were filled with a sense of grim urgency, and the Dimension Spirit, affected by his tone, saw its chaotic light grow slightly stronger. However, it still didn't take further action. Chen's eyes flashed as he realized it was almost there. If he were to merge with the Dimension Spirit, he would become the ruler of this realm, with the lives of all beings in his hands. As a guardian, the Dimension Spirit clearly didn't trust him, an outsider. Thus, he took another step forward and solemnly declared, "If I become the ruler of this dimension, I swear by my heart to protect this realm. As long as I am alive, I will never allow the extraterritorial evil clan to step foot in this world again." His voice was loud and far-reaching, resounding through the chaos like thunder, echoing without end. His oath came from the heart, something others might not detect, but the Dimension Spirit, born of the heavens and earth, was highly sensitive to it. If his heart was not sincere, even the slightest distraction could not escape its perception. Thus, shortly after Chen's vow, the dimension's spirit erupted in a blinding surge of primordial chaos light. Within the chaos, ethereal celestial music seemed to echo, and countless shadows of living beings faintly appeared within the vast expanse. Chen couldn't help but feel his heart surge with intense emotion at the sight. Uncontrollable joy filled him, for he knew this was the dimension's spirit's agreement. With a thought, his physical body, located outside Blood Demon Mountain, suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared within the chaos. As Chen's consciousness returned to his body, he gazed at the massive chaos sphere, its diameter reaching 1,000 feet. His form moved, effortlessly piercing through the thick chaos light barrier, landing directly atop the chaos sphere. He sat cross-legged, his eyes half closed, and as he did so, his body slowly sank into the chaos sphere. In this chaos, time seemed to stand still, offering him ample opportunity to challenge the Heavenly Supreme. As his physical body sank into the chaos sphere, Chen's body trembled. In the next moment, he felt as if submerged in an ocean of chaos. The vast and boundless chaos energy surged toward him, eventually manifesting as a streak of light that slowly poured into his crown. Boom! The chaos light was the primordial force birthed with the formation of the dimension. Vast and endless, this power could be considered top-tier even in the Great Thousand Worlds, though it was rare. Only dimensions that had given birth to a dimension spirit could contain such energy. As Chen felt the immense power pouring in, he immediately began to circulate his cultivation technique. His flesh and blood trembled, greedily devouring the overwhelming force. In just a few dozen breaths, Chen felt as if he had consumed billions of supreme spiritual liquids. His heart shook slightly, astonished by the purity and limitless nature of the dimension spirit's power. Truly, it deserved to be a spirit born of the heavens and earth. His thoughts quickly stabilized, and he gradually entered a deeper state of cultivation. In the chaos, time moved slowly, and Chen was in no rush. He simply allowed the chaos light to continuously pour into him, while his spiritual energy surged at an astonishing rate. Thus, Chen's body sat motionless in the chaos, as if decades had passed. His form remained like a rock, unwavering. Even his breathing grew so faint it was barely noticeable. In the chaos, time stood still, and only the chaos light continued to pour into Chen's crown. This state lasted until a certain moment when a change finally occurred. One day, Chen's statue-like body seemed to tremble slightly. The next moment, his eyes, which had been tightly shut for an unknown amount of time, slowly opened. Buzz! The instant his eyes opened, a dazzling beam of light shot from them, so bright it was indescribable. It pierced through the chaos and vanished within it. Chen slowly closed his hand into a fist, feeling the overwhelming spiritual power coursing through his body. He trembled slightly, as if countless thunderbolts exploded inside him. Boom! Millions of streams of spiritual light erupted from Chen's body, and as the light flashed, his form began to expand in circles. In just a few breaths, Chen grew to a height of 1,000 feet, sitting cross-legged in the chaos. His body radiated a holy light, making him appear as if a great sun had risen, illuminating the chaos. Chen gazed at his massive body, sensing the immense spiritual power contained within every part of his flesh, bone, and even every drop of blood. That power completely filled his body, to the point where it could no longer contain any more. It felt as if a lake was filled to the brim, and any additional water would cause it to overflow, shattering its banks. At this moment, he had already reached the limit beneath the Heavenly Supreme. Based on his estimation, with the terrifying spiritual power within his body, if he were to encounter a powerhouse close to the Heavenly Supreme, a single strike could likely destroy them completely. At this stage, Chen could sense the existence of a shackling barrier. This barrier was incredibly solid, blocking all his paths to further progress. It must be the Heavenly Supreme barrier. Chen muttered to himself, his expression thoughtful. But now, having reached his limit, if he continued, he might be able to break through the barrier. However, there was also a high possibility that his physical body would be torn apart, and once his spiritual power backfired, it would most likely be the day of his fall. Such a dual outcome was indeed terrifying, and no one would dare try it lightly. Mu Chen's gaze flickered. After a long moment, his eyes suddenly sharpened. The path of cultivation was always fraught with hardships. To reach the pinnacle, one needed an unwavering sharpness and courage. Today was his great opportunity. If he missed it, who knew when such an opportunity would come again? With that thought, Mu Chen's expression became solemn, no longer hesitant or fearful. He raised his head and, looking into the void, spoke in a deep voice. I asked the spirit of the dimension to help me break the heavenly barrier. The chaos fell into silence. After several breaths, the surrounding chaos light began to radiate. A massive chaos orb, 1,000 feet in diameter, shot upwards. As it spun, it rapidly shrank, and then, in an instant, it shot downward, transforming into a streak of chaotic light that entered Mu Chen's heavenly spirit. Mu Chen took a deep breath, slowly closing his eyes. Success or failure, it all depended on this action. Boom. As the streak of chaotic light entered Mu Chen's heavenly spirit, his massive body, towering 1,000 feet, suddenly trembled violently. In the next moment, countless streams of spiritual light erupted from every pore of his body. The spiritual power contained within them was overwhelming, so much so that, upon leaving his body, it transformed into a rain of spiritual energy, filling the chaotic space. Clearly, this was because Mu Chen's spiritual power had surged to its maximum, unable to be contained any longer. As a result, his physical body instinctively expelled some of it to protect itself. However, compared to the immense power granted by the spirit of the dimension, this outflow of energy was like a drop in the ocean. Crack. At that moment, cracks appeared on Mu Chen's massive body, rapidly spreading across it. Within just a few dozen breaths, his body resembled a shattered porcelain figure, covered in cracks, looking pitiful. But Mu Chen's expression remained calm. He knew this was the limit of his body's endurance. Since it has reached its limit, then let it shatter. Only through breaking can one stand tall. It is in the process of destruction that the heavenly supreme body is forged. He murmured softly. His black eyes were filled with determination. He was not moved in the slightest by the danger of his body shattering. The next moment, he formed a seal with his hands, no longer suppressing the violent spiritual power within him, allowing it to rampage freely. Buzz. Billions of streams of spiritual light erupted from the cracks on Mu Chen's body, and the light gradually expanded. In an instant, there was a deafening crash. Boom. Mu Chen's 1,000-foot-tall body violently exploded, but there was no bloodshed. Instead, his body shattered into countless particles of light, each one gleaming like crystals, gently floating in the air. Countless specks of light floated, and after an unknown amount of time, a gentle breeze began to form. The wind howled, continuously pulling in the spiritual light particles, attempting to reshape them. As time passed, the spiritual light particles slowly began to gather. Faintly, a figure began to take shape within the light, as though Mu Chen's body was about to be reconstructed. Boom. However, at that moment, a strange tremor rang out through the chaos. The sound was incredibly eerie, and just the mere resonance of it caused the body that was about to reform to shake violently. Although his body had shattered, Mu Chen's divine consciousness remained intact. He sensed the tremor, and his heart jolted. He looked up. In the midst of the chaos, the void rippled, and dark clouds began to surge. Within them, black light pulsed, seemingly brewing something mysterious, constantly absorbing the chaotic light, and growing ever deeper and more enigmatic. Mu Chen stared at the dark clouds, a deep sense of dread rising within him. He couldn't help but think with grave intensity. Is this the heavenly supreme tribulation? It is said that when one breaks through the heavenly barrier, a tribulation will inevitably follow, known as the heavenly supreme tribulation. This tribulation is incredibly terrifying. Not only those beneath the heavenly supreme level, but even true heavenly supremes would be wary of it. This is troublesome. Mu Chen sighed inwardly. The heavenly supreme tribulation had absorbed the chaos light from this place, and its power seemed to have become even more terrifying. At this moment, he was in the critical stage of remolding his physical body. If interrupted, he might lose the opportunity to break through. so there could be no mistakes. Rumble. As Mu Chen remained focused, black clouds swirled above, and a stream of black water fell from the sky. It seemed light at first, but when it landed, it crushed even the void beneath it. Mu Chen's eyes narrowed at the sight. From his gradually reforming body, a brilliant purple-gold light erupted. The massive immortal golden body appeared, and with a series of hand seals, 300 immortal divine runes flew into the air, forming a purple-gold barrier above him. Boom! The black water struck the purple-gold barrier, causing it to tremble violently. Each drop of black water was as heavy as a mountain. Together, they fell like a mountain range, crashing down with terrifying force. Under the impact of the black water, cracks appeared on the purple-gold barrier. Fortunately, it did not shatter but held firm until the black water dissipated into thin air. Such terrifying heavenly supreme tribulation. Mu Chen's heart trembled. This was just the beginning, and it almost destroyed the defense made from 300 purple-gold immortal divine runes. What would happen later? How much more terrifying would it become? Fearing the worst, Mu Chen did not dare to be careless. He immediately activated the immortal golden body again, and refined more immortal divine runes to repair the cracking purple-gold barrier. At this moment, the black clouds in the sky churned once more. The temperature in the air suddenly soared as a streak of fire descended from the heavens. This fire was black and faint, but Mu Chen did not dare to underestimate it. The repaired purple-gold barrier emitted a golden light. A streak of black fire howled down and landed on the purple-gold barrier. But surprisingly, no deafening explosion followed. Mu Chen saw that when the fire landed, it quickly melted the purple-gold barrier, as if it were an extremely corrosive venom, sizzling as it dissolved the defense. Seeing this, Mu Chen quickly threw the purple-gold barrier far away. Moments later, the barrier melted into a pool of molten slag. Boom! Before Mu Chen could even contemplate the power of the black fire, the black clouds above once again stirred. This time, however, the roar was deafening. A black meteor slowly emerged from the clouds and came crashing down. Mu Chen knew he could not allow it to gather any more momentum. His mind moved, and the immortal golden body erupted in a brilliant golden light. Immortal divine runes gathered in his hands, transforming into a giant golden spear. Whoosh! With a mighty swing, the golden spear shot forth, striking the black meteor. The impact made the meteor tremble, but it was obliterated under the terrifying force, turning to dust. Whoosh! Whoosh! However, more purple-gold giant spears shot up toward the sky. Though each strike was shattered with overwhelming force, the black meteor's descent was slowed. At this moment, Mu Chen activated the immortal golden body once again. Immortal divine runes soared into the air, forming massive purple-gold nets in the sky. Boom! Boom! The black meteor fell, crashing through the purple-gold nets with fierce force. But as it descended, its size had already shrunk by almost half. Now, the immortal golden body shot up like a rocket, his massive fists glowing with golden light. He swung one fist toward the black meteor, meeting it head-on. Boom! A shockwave of unimaginable force rippled through the air as the black meteor exploded. The immortal golden body was sent flying back, cracks appearing on the massive fist. After the black meteor fell, the sky briefly quieted, but Mu Chen's nerves remained tense. This was only the calm before the storm. What came next would be far worse. Boom! Suddenly, black lightning tore through the clouds, raining down with overwhelming destruction. Each bolt contained the power of annihilation, terrifying beyond measure. Mu Chen's expression slightly changed as he saw the situation. Without hesitation, he let out a cold snort in his mind, and his immortal golden body erupted with brilliant golden light. A massive golden lotus formed, completely enveloping them for protection. Boom! Boom! The black lightning continued to strike down relentlessly, pounding fiercely on the golden lotus. Each strike made the lotus tremble violently, and petals quietly shattered one by one. This wave of attacks was extremely swift and seemed endless, like a torrential storm. Even though Mu Chen activated his strongest defense, it still felt like a fragile boat drifting in a violent storm, as if it could capsize at any moment. Booming thunder echoed through the sky, and the relentless bombardment lasted for an unknown amount of time. Although Chen used his immortal golden body to desperately repair the golden lotus, it still couldn't hold on. Eventually, at a certain moment, the golden lotus reached its limit and exploded with a loud bang. The golden lotus shattered, and several bolts of black lightning struck Chen's immortal golden body, causing deep cracks to appear across his massive frame. Fortunately, the black lightning gradually began to dissipate at that moment, indicating that Chen had survived yet another trial. As the lightning faded, Chen couldn't help but gasp. He was clearly shaken by the terrifying power of the Heavenly Supreme Tribulation. No wonder there were so few Heavenly Supremes in this world. Just this one tribulation was enough to make countless strong warriors hesitate to approach the path of the Heavenly Supreme. Rumor has it that there are usually only 4 stages to the Heavenly Supreme Tribulation. It should be over now, right? Chen muttered to himself. Such a terrifying barrage. If there were more, it would be unbearable not just for him, but even for a true Heavenly Supreme. Buzz. But just as he spoke, he suddenly sensed a change in the black clouds above. He looked up sharply and saw the entire black cloud mass shrinking toward a single direction. After a few moments, the clouds completely dispersed, revealing a black void in their place. The black void silently hovered, before slowly descending, locking its gaze on Chen. Damn it! How is there a 5th stage? The black void descended, causing Chen's heart to stir with immense waves of fear. He could feel the immense power contained within that void. The strength within that power was even more terrifying than the full-force strike of the Blood Demon Emperor earlier. Chen was stunned. While some rare Heavenly Supreme Tribulations did exceed the usual 4 stages, he never expected to encounter one so unlucky. Moreover, the black void seemed to have absorbed too much chaos light from the surroundings, and now it was fully formed. The power it contained was beyond description. This time, it's really dangerous. Buzz. In the chaotic heights, a dark void descended slowly. Its form was ethereal, and though its descent was slow, the moment it reached the ground, Chen instinctively knew he could not avoid it. In that instant, an indescribable sense of impending doom surged in Chen's heart. He realized that if he made even the slightest mistake, today might be the day he truly perished here. Without hesitation, he activated his immortal golden body to its absolute limit. The purple golden light erupted, and despite the numerous cracks on his immortal golden body, he gathered all his strength. Once again, a massive immortal golden lotus appeared, forming a protective barrier. This was Chen's strongest defense. Even with his current strength, it was difficult to perform it twice in succession because of the immense toll it took on the immortal golden body. Yet, at this critical moment, he knew he could not hold back. Otherwise, everything would be for naught. Just as Chen activated his ultimate defense, the dark void finally descended, lightly landing on the golden lotus. The moment it touched, an endless stream of black light erupted from within, engulfing everything. As the black light enveloped the golden lotus, it began to violently tremble. In the next instant, it started to vanish at a visible speed. It was a complete dissolution, as even the spiritual energy seemed to disappear under the black light's influence. Chen's strongest defense was utterly powerless against the black light. His heart and mind shook violently. His physical body had already been remade for the most part, and as he looked up at the golden lotus, which was being rapidly eroded in just a few dozen breaths, an overwhelming aura of impending death surrounded him. If a regular person were here at this moment, they would probably be horrified and despairing. But Chen had experienced many life and death moments over the years, so though there was fluctuation in his eyes, there was no real fear. He pressed his lips tightly together and did not give up despite the unstoppable, dark, hollow void. Instead, he focused his mind and merged his being with the immortal golden body, struggling to resist. More than 10 breaths passed, and the golden lotus completely turned to nothingness. The dark, hollow void descended once more, this time directly targeting Chen's immortal golden body and the flesh he had reshaped halfway. Chen looked up, his expression neither joyful nor sad. The purple-golden glow surrounding his immortal golden body grew even stronger and rounder. From a distance, It resembled a great Buddha, sitting quietly in the void. As the void descended, the overwhelming black light poured down upon the immortal golden body. The black light spread, and the purple golden glow gradually faded. Soon, the immortal golden body began to disintegrate, starting from the head, rapidly turning to nothingness. Chen stared at this scene, his eyes slowly closing. In this moment of destruction, his consciousness seemed to merge completely with the immortal golden body. A sense of enlightenment rose from his heart. The black light enveloped everything. In no time, the immortal golden body turned to nothingness beneath the black light. Following this, Chen's partially reshaped flesh also dissipated under the illumination of the black light. Thus, in the chaos, Chen's figure completely vanished, as though he had turned to nothingness under the heavenly supreme tribulation. As Chen disappeared, the dark, hollow void also slowly dissipated between heaven and earth. The entire chaos fell into a profound silence. This deathly silence seemed to last for an eternity, like 10 years or even 100 years. Yet, no matter how time passed, the flow of time in this chaos remained slow and stagnant. Outside Blood Demon Mountain, Susu and the others gazed at the massive pagoda, their eyes filled with anxiety. Although Chen seemed to have spent several decades cultivating in that chaos, here, only half a day had passed. But even half a day was enough to make Susu and the others uneasy. They could sense that the spiritual light atop the pagoda had begun to dim, which meant that the Blood Demon Emperor would likely break free soon. If Chen hadn't returned by then, they would all be reduced to ashes at the Blood Demon Emperor's whim. There's no need to rush. We've already done everything we can. Whether we succeed or fail, it's all in the hands of fate, the White Dragon Supreme said, appearing much calmer. He was used to the cycle of life and death, and he knew that, at this point, worrying would do no good. Rather than worry in vain, it was better to wait quietly. Susu nodded slightly at his words and said, "Master will surely succeed." The White Dragon Supreme sighed lightly. Having cultivated in the great thousand worlds for a long time, he understood how difficult it was to ascend to the Heavenly Supreme. Even the ancient clans with deep foundations in the great thousand worlds found it incredibly difficult to create a Heavenly Supreme. This was because the process of ascension was fraught with countless dangers. A slight mistake could result in annihilation. Thus, while he recognized Chen's extraordinary talent, whether he could truly break through to the Heavenly Supreme was still uncertain. In the chaos, time passed without notice. The deathly silence spread, and one day, a strange movement occurred in the chaos. A speck of purple-golden dust appeared, weak at first, but after some time, it suddenly burst with a surge of purple-golden light. The light spread, and the speck of dust expanded rapidly. In just a dozen breaths, it transformed into a gigantic purple-golden cocoon, about 1,000 feet in size. Ancient patterns, as if born from the very heavens and earth, were etched into the surface of the cocoon, with golden lines extending, symbolizing immortality. As the purple-golden cocoon formed, it began to devour the chaotic light of the universe. After a long time, it seemed to reach some kind of limit. With a loud crack, cracks spread across the golden cocoon. Crack, crack. The cracks extended uncontrollably, quickly covering every corner of the cocoon. In the next moment, the cocoon trembled and exploded into pieces. Millions of purple-golden rays shot out, piercing through the chaos itself. In the midst of the chaos, an indescribable aura began to coalesce. As this aura took form, even the chaotic light seemed to retreat, unwilling to touch it. The gaze converged, and amidst the endless purple-golden light, a figure seemed to flicker in and out of visibility. After a few breaths, the figure became clearer. It was there, standing with hands clasped behind his back, a young man with a tall, slender figure. He wore a dark robe with wide sleeves, surrounded by a swirling aura of purple-golden light. Every flicker of this light caused the world to tremble, winds to rise, and clouds to churn. The one standing in the purple-golden light was naturally Chen. His eyes, which had been tightly closed, slowly opened. Within his pitch-black eyes, it seemed as though the entire universe was contained, deep and unfathomable. Just the sweep of his gaze caused the void to ripple. He lowered his head slightly, gazing at his own physical body. It now emitted a jade-like glow, truly pure and flawless, as though cleansed of all impurities. This body had fully fused blood, flesh, and spiritual energy. From now on, even if his physical body were to be destroyed, as long as spiritual energy still existed in the world, he could reconstitute his body with a mere thought. Truly, he seemed immortal and indestructible. This is Heavenly Supreme, Chen murmured to himself. The awe-inspiring power, capable of annihilating the world with a single motion, intoxicated him. Such power was something he could never have imagined before. He could feel that even the attack he had previously unleashed with all his strength, or even when he activated the eightfold pagoda, might not compare to the power of a single strike he could deliver now. Such power. No wonder the Heavenly Supreme Tribulation is so terrifying, Chen muttered. Had it not been for the moment he faced death and fused with the immortal golden body, experiencing the third supreme divine ability, he might have truly been in grave danger. This third supreme divine ability was called Immortal Life and Death Transformation. It was the final and most mysterious technique of the immortal golden body. Its conditions for activation were extremely harsh. Only when facing true death could one hope to cultivate it. However, once mastered, even facing death, one could rise from the ashes and grow stronger. But such a technique required immense courage, for not everyone possessed the fortitude to face death head-on. Chen smiled slightly, his heart filled with reflection. To reach this point today, he had endured countless trials and failures, but he had remained steadfast, never swayed by external distractions. Through years of hard cultivation, today he had finally reaped the fruits of his labor. From the Northern Spirit Academy in his youth, to now standing at the heavenly gate. From here on, the sky was high and the bird could fly freely. This vast world would surely have a place for him. Chen chuckled softly. With a wave of his sleeve, his figure slowly dissipated in the void, and the chaotic storm vanished with him. Blood Demon Mountain. Boom. Thunderous roars reverberated throughout the heavens and earth. With each rumble, Baisusu and countless native inhabitants turned pale, trembling in fear. The source of the sound came from the pagoda. At this moment, the pagoda was shaking violently, clearly overwhelmed by a terrifying force. It seemed the pagoda could no longer withstand the onslaught. Boom. Another massive crash echoed. The pagoda trembled violently, and its base shattered. A sea of blood seemed to pour out, eventually taking the form of the Blood Demon Emperor in midair. Baisusu and the others watched the reappearance of the Blood Demon Emperor with a surge of despair in their hearts. However, just as they were bracing themselves for death, they realized that the Blood Demon Emperor did not even glance at them. Instead, he gazed at the sky with a serious expression. Baisusu and the others froze in place, then suddenly seemed to understand. They looked up in shock. In the boundless sky above, a beam of chaotic light descended from the heavens. As the chaotic light faded, a familiar tall figure stepped forward, and a hearty laugh echoed through the air. The fear in their hearts instantly subsided. "My apologies for keeping you waiting," came the voice. In the sky, as the chaotic light dissipated, a young figure floated in midair. His robe billowed in the wind, and his face, radiant with jade-like light, was handsome beyond words. His pitch-black eyes, deep like the starry sky, captivated anyone who gazed into them, drawing their consciousness in without escape. Baisusu, White Dragon Supreme, and the others could not take their eyes off Chen as soon as he appeared. Then, they clearly felt the overwhelming difference in him at this moment. In the past, Chen's spiritual power was vast and overwhelming. Even when it wasn't being actively used, it still emitted a terrifying pressure, making others feel a sense of oppression. But now, Chen no longer carried that oppressive aura. He stood smiling in midair, and if one tried to sense him, it was as if all the spiritual power within him had dissipated, leaving no trace of spiritual fluctuations. Although Chen could still be seen standing there with the naked eye, in the perception of Baisusu and the others, the space where he stood was utterly ethereal, as if there were no presence at all. Thus, even if they unleashed the most violent of attacks in his direction, they likely wouldn't touch a corner of his garment. Bai Susu and the White Dragon Supreme exchanged looks, their faces filled with shock. They naturally didn't think that Mu Chen had truly lost all his spiritual power. The reason they could no longer sense him was simple. The gap between them and Mu Chen had reached an insurmountable level. And the only explanation for this was that Mu Chen had successfully broken through the heavenly barrier and stepped into the realm of the Heavenly Supreme. My lord, has he really succeeded? Bai Susu murmured, her eyes filled with astonishment. Although she was unfamiliar with the so-called Heavenly Supreme realm, from the disparity between the Blood Demon Emperor and the Blood Demon King, she could tell just how vast the gap between these two realms truly was. She had always believed in Mu Chen, mostly because she had no other choice. He was her last hope, and in order to prevent herself from falling into despair, she had no choice but to cling to that hope, convincing herself that it could truly save them. However, deep down, she likely never expected Mu Chen to actually break through to the Heavenly Supreme realm. So when they saw him now, they were left utterly astounded. Truly a genius beyond compare. The White Dragon Supreme sighed deeply. As someone with a profound understanding of the Great Thousand Worlds, he knew just how astonishing Mu Chen's achievements were. Such talent was truly a once-in-a-lifetime kind of genius. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel an immense sense of relief. Who would have thought that the chance encounter of a good deed from years ago would actually fulfill his wish? While Bai Susu and the others were stunned by Mu Chen's success, the Blood Demon Emperor's face darkened. The mocking look he had once held from his high position had completely disappeared. The moment Mu Chen stepped into the Heavenly Supreme realm, the Blood Demon Emperor knew that his previous advantage of crushing superiority would vanish. Damn it, if I had known, I shouldn't have held back earlier. The Blood Demon Emperor regretted deeply. When he had fought Mu Chen before, although he hadn't shown mercy, he hadn't used his full strength either. If he had, with his Demon Emperor level strength, no matter how many tricks Mu Chen had up his sleeve, he wouldn't have gained any advantage. Not to mention that he wouldn't have been trapped, buying Mu Chen the crucial moment for his breakthrough. Regretting now won't do much good. Mu Chen, seeing the Blood Demon Emperor's gloomy expression, immediately understood his thoughts and smiled as he spoke. The Blood Demon Emperor's eyes twitched, and he took a deep breath, suppressing the turmoil in his heart. With a deadpan expression, he said, "Even if you've entered the Heavenly Supreme realm, it doesn't mean you can defeat me. However, now that you've reached this stage, you do have the qualification to speak with me face to face. If you agree, I will lead my clan and leave this world." Mu Chen chuckled lightly. "Now you want to leave? Isn't it a bit late for that?" With that, he raised his eyelids, and a cold gleam gathered in his eyes as if they contained the vastness of the universe. "And what about all the slaughter you've caused in this world? Do you think you can just walk away unscathed?" A flicker of coldness flashed in the Blood Demon Emperor's eyes. He looked up, glaring at Mu Chen with a fierce expression. "I only retreated earlier because I didn't want to fight to the death with you. Do you really think I'm afraid of you?" Mu Chen gazed at the Blood Demon Emperor, who was now putting on a tough front, and smiled indifferently. He made a hand gesture, and the space around him rippled. Then, two figures, one black, one white, slowly emerged from the space distortions. "Since that's the case, please, enlighten me." The three Mu Chen stared coldly at the Blood Demon Emperor, and the space around them rippled, causing the entire world to seem to tremble. The White Dragon Supreme, Bai Susu, and the others swallowed hard. After a long silence, the former let out a sharp breath and exclaimed in shock, "What a terrifying divine technique!" When Mu Chen performed the One Qi Transforms Three Purities technique before, although it was powerful, it didn't leave much of an impression. But now, as he stepped into the Heavenly Supreme realm and unleashed this technique, the sheer force of it struck terror into people. Because once this technique was activated, it transformed into three genuine Heavenly Supremes. Looking at the three identical Mu Chens in the sky, even the Blood Demon Emperor couldn't help but show a hint of fear in his eyes. Originally, he had thought that Mu Chen's clone technique could only create clones beneath the Heavenly Supreme level, but what he saw now left him stunned. If a battle were to break out now, it meant he would face three Heavenly Supremes. He didn't need to think twice to know that such a battle was one he would inevitably lose. Whoosh! Therefore, with a wave of his sleeve, the Blood Demon Emperor summoned a vast sea of blood that raged through the heavens and earth, sweeping toward the three Mu-Chens. Meanwhile, his own body transformed into a streak of blood light, retreating at lightning speed. It seemed he was planning to flee without a fight. Mu-Chen sneered as he watched the Blood Demon Emperor retreat without hesitation. Extending his hand, he grasped the oncoming sea of blood. In an instant, the sky exploded with light, and the very space ahead cracked open as if forming a gigantic mouth, which swallowed the sea of blood, tossing it into another void. At the same time, with his other hand, Mu-Chen reached toward the retreating Blood Demon Emperor. Boom! The very fabric of space shattered, forming a massive black hole spanning thousands of miles. Countless fragments of space were drawn together by an invisible force and transformed into a translucent, colossal hand, which grabbed the Blood Demon Emperor's body within it. Boom! Endless bloodlight erupted into the sky, and the next moment, a towering blood-red demonic shadow formed, shattering the space hand and dashing into the void. Swish! However, just then, white-robed Mu-Chen appeared above the shadow, his finger pointing downward. SSSHH. It was as if an endless gale had gathered from all directions, transforming into a giant wind pillar thousands of miles long. The pillar fell like a solid mass, crashing down on the blood-red demonic shadow to suppress it. The blood-red shadow let out a roar, its demonic fist striking out to clash with the descending wind pillar. Boom! But the moment they made contact, the wind pillar suddenly dissipated into millions of sharp gusts. Each gust tore through the blood-red demonic shadow, creating deep gashes that made it howl in pain. At this point, Mu-Chen had entered the heavenly supreme realm. Every attack he made was far more terrifying than when he had exerted all his strength before, so it was clear the Blood Demon Emperor could no longer fight as easily as he once did. Swish! While the blood-red demonic shadow was held back by white-robed Mu-Chen, the space in front of it twisted, and a figure in black robes emerged, stepping through the void. Black-robed Mu-Chen's gaze was cold and indifferent. Without a word, his body erupted with a glowing jade-like radiance, making him appear crystal clear. It was as if his flesh had turned into white jade. This was the true heavenly supreme body. Once activated, every movement could control the vast powers of the heavens and earth. A single snap of the fingers could bring about the collapse of the world. Black-robed Mu-Chen unleashed the heavenly supreme body and struck out with his palm. It seemed light and airy, with no visible power. But as the palm moved, it seemed to disregard the very space in front of him, and when it landed, it crashed directly into the chest of the blood-red demonic shadow. Boom! When his palm landed, the entire world seemed to shake violently. The blood-red demonic shadow was sent flying backward from the force, and in a scream of agony, it shattered instantly. Puffed! As the shadow collapsed, a burst of blood shot out, followed by a mouthful of fresh blood. It was the true form of the Blood Demon Emperor. In just a short exchange, the Blood Demon Emperor had completely fallen into a disadvantageous position, with no strength left to fight back. 3 beams of light descended from the sky, surrounding him from 3 directions, trapping him in place. The cold, indifferent gazes of Mu-Chen swept over him, causing the Blood Demon Emperor to shiver with fear. Staring into Mu-Chen's eyes, filled with killing intent, the Blood Demon Emperor knew that the latter would not let him off today. His expression grew increasingly sinister. "You really think you've won?" He sneered at Mu-Chen, his voice laced with venom. Mu-Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. Spiritual light gathered at his fingertips, but he had no intention of wasting time on more words. He was ready to strike for the kill. Whoosh! At that moment, the Blood Demon Emperor bit his tongue and spat out a mouthful of essence blood that shot into the sky. Within the blood, a blood-red talisman materialized. The talisman exploded, shattering the very void. Demon Summoning Talisman. Come forth, all demons. Accompanied by the cold, eerie voice of the Blood Demon Emperor, the void around him turned pitch black, as though a spatial passage was formed, leading to an unknown destination. At the end of this passage, an overwhelmingly evil aura began to emanate. Mu-Chen's eyes instantly narrowed upon witnessing this. That feeling, The end of the passage leads to the domain of the extraterritorial evil clan.